So, what happens when a lifelong champion of the free market turns around and says, you know what? I was wrong. Today, we're going to dive into Glenn Beck's really surprising case for tariffs and what that might mean for the future of the American economy.
That's right. With just those 3 words, I was wrong, political commentator Glenn Beck basically upended decades of his own free market thinking. He is now making a strong case for tariffs, a policy he used to absolutely condemn. So what on earth could cause a reversal that dramatic?
Well, Beck kicks off his whole argument with something you really don't hear every day in politics, a refreshingly direct admission. He says the economic playbook he's been using for decades, it's just obsolete now. The world, he says, has completely changed.
But he wants to be clear, he's not just tossing his core principles out the window. Instead, he's arguing for a strategic pivot. It's about adapting those same principles to what he sees as a much more dangerous and competitive world. Okay, so to really grasp how big of a deal this shift is, we kind of have to understand where he's coming from. What was Beck's original, ironclad belief about free trade? For years, Beck's position was straight out of the classic free market playbook. Voluntary trade is a win-win. It lifts all boats. And protectionism? In his view, that was a policy that came from fear, not from strength. But here's the twist. Beck now says this wasn't just about some high-minded ideal. Think about it. After World War II, America was this industrial apex predator, standing on top of a world of economic rubble. Free trade wasn't just a philosophy, it was a powerful, strategic weapon to completely dominate global markets. So this new way of looking at the context, it kind of sent him down a rabbit hole, back into the history books, and what he found there was a pretty surprising truth about the role tariffs played in America's rise to power. It turns out, far from being some radical idea, Beck argues tariffs were once completely normal. I mean, the founding fathers used them to fund the entire government. Then you have Abraham Lincoln, who used them to protect and build up American industries into a powerhouse. It wasn't until 1913, with the income tax and then the disastrous Smoot-Hawley tariffs in the 30s, that they became politically toxic. So how did we get from tariffs being a tool for building the nation to what he calls a policy of unilateral surrender? Well, Beck's point is that the game changed, but America just didn't adapt. This slide just captures his whole before and after argument perfectly. On one hand, you had the post-World War II era. America was dominant, there was no real competition, and opening our markets gave us a massive advantage. Now, flash forward to today. We're in a world of fierce global competition, unfair trade practices like huge subsidies and intellectual property theft. In this new game, he argues, America's old open market strategy has become a huge liability. And that all boils down to this one crucial point for Beck: free trade. If it's not reciprocal, if the other side isn't playing by the same rules, it's not free trade at all. It's unilateral surrender. And according to Beck, this surrender wasn't just some abstract economic concept. It had real, devastating consequences. We're talking about shuttered factories, hollowed-out communities, and a really dangerous dependence on foreign adversaries for the stuff we absolutely need. So this is where he really flips the script. He starts to reframe the tariff, not as a punishment, not as a tax on consumers, but as a tool for national reconstruction. And for anyone who thinks this is just a theory, Beck points to Donald Trump's claim of securing $18 trillion in foreign investment. The logic here is pretty simple. Tariffs create an incentive for companies to build here in America, and that brings jobs and investment home with them. And this brings us to how Beck totally redefines nation building. He says, look, after World War II, America rebuilt the world, Europe, Japan. Now he argues it's time to use new tools like strategic tariffs to rebuild America itself. So where is all this heading? What does this vision for the future actually look like? Well, Beck's final proposal is a big one. It's a complete overhaul of the American tax system. He calls it the Great Swap. Here's how it would work. Step 1, you impose strategic tariffs on foreign goods. Step 2, you use that money to fund the government. And then step 3, this is the big one, you drastically cut or even get rid of the federal income tax. The result, he says, more money in your pocket and a huge incentive to bring manufacturing jobs back home. And really, this is the fundamental choice at the heart of his new vision. Do we tax foreign imports or do we tax American paychecks? He's basically arguing it's time to reverse that big shift from 1913 and put the burden back on foreign goods instead of our own labor. But he's quick to point out this is not about building some fortress America and shutting out the world. Beck sees these tariffs as temporary scaffolding, a protective support system that you take down once American industry is strong enough to stand on its own again. In the end, when you boil it all down, Beck's message is pretty stark. The era of just effortless American dominance is over. The old economic playbook just doesn't work anymore, and it's time to write a new one for a much more competitive world.
So, what are we supposed to make of all this? Beck has definitely made a powerful case for a pretty radical shift in how we think about the economy, but the fundamental question, the one we're all left with, is this. Is the tariff just an outdated wall from a century ago, or is it actually a necessary scaffold to build America's future?